Sales are easy. It's making the call that's hard. Hi, my name is Dave Gallegos. I've spent the last 25 years in the mortgage industry and a lifetime in sales. In this show, I'll bring that experience, expertise, and the experts I've met to you with actionable advice to improve your sales. It's not magic. You just make the call. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Make the Call. My name is Dave Gallegos. I'm the president of Zenith Home Loans, and this is my podcast, Make the Call. We're in sales. We're in the mortgage business, obviously. This podcast is primarily for people, and obviously in sales, but primarily in the mortgage and real estate space. My goal is to just share what I've learned over the last 27 years in mortgage lending and pretty much my whole career in sales of some kind. This past episode, if you've watched the past episode or listened to the past episode, I'm going through the Darren Hardy Insane Productivity modules again. Big fan. Check it out. Highly recommended. I talked about what kills our productivity. What is the number one killer of our productivity? And we introduced the idea that multitasking is the number one killer of productivity. And so I wanted to talk some more about that today, primarily because people think they're good at it, which is really kind of funny. There's a great book I read years ago on this subject of multitasking, and it's called The Myth of Multitasking. And he calls it a myth because you can't really multitask. What he said in here, I love his quote, and I'll share this again at the end. When someone says they're good at multitasking, what they're really saying is they're inefficient. It's like publicly admitting you're going to make it a habit to screw up multiple things at the same time. So listen to that quote, because that's a really powerful quote. And it's true, because I see this all the time. And when you're doing a mortgage loan or you're doing a real estate transaction with all these contracts and all the things that are going on, when you're trying to do multiple things at once, the odds of you screwing something up and making a mistake and missing something are sky high. They just go through the roof because you're not focused, and you're not focused on a single task of doing one thing at the same time. And in his book, The Myth of Multitasking, he talks about how because it's a belief for most people. In fact, people brag about it. It's like, oh, I'm a really good multitasker. Man, I never want to hire somebody who says that. It's scary to hear it, but because people think that they can do it. His argument is that what we all consider multitasking is what he calls switch tasking. In other words, we are rapidly shifting our attention between two tasks, which of course leads to decreased efficiency and an increase in errors, right? So you're not going to be as inefficient because you're going back and forth between two things at the same time. A great example of this, and I think I might have talked about it on the last episode, a great example is if you can do this on Zoom calls, because people are on Zoom calls all the time, and you can just watch people. So instead of being somebody who's reading his email and typing at the same time, just watch the screen. By the way, that's a great example of multitasking. Watch the screen of how many people are multitasking while they're actually taking time to be on a Zoom call, but they're doing something else at the same time. So they're not listening to the call. They're doing something else. You can't do those two things at the same time. You hear it in the background, but you're not processing it and you're not understanding it. And if somebody didn't say your name and asked you a question, you wouldn't even know it, right? So what you're doing is you're attempting to perform multiple attention requiring tasks. In other words, you're trying to do two cognitive tasks at the same time, and our brains can't do that. What he calls attention requiring tasks, and the difference between that and background tasking. So multitasking is two cognitive tasks at the same time. But what he calls background tasking is when you're taking a primary task, something that's a cognitive task, and you're pairing it with something that doesn't require any attention at all. For instance, working out and listening to music. Okay, so you're listening to music and you're in the middle of the workout. You're probably thinking about a bunch of other things, but if you're listening to the song, you can continue your workout while you're listening to the song. It doesn't require that kind of attention. Background, it's also like driving your car and carrying on a conversation. Okay, you can drive your car with muscle memory. Like you drive home, like consider the first time that you drove a car. Like it took forever just to, I don't remember when I was learning how to drive a car, like all the things that you had to think about and remember, check the mirrors, put on your seatbelt, hands at 10 and 2, like all these things that you were taught. And now we drive our cars and we're eating a sandwich and we're having a conversation and we're, God forbid, looking at our phones. That's because the driving part of the car, and by the way, you can't focus on your phone and drive your car and pay attention to the road at the same time. So don't do that. But those are examples of doing two things at once. When you can talk, when you're driving your car and you're carrying on a conversation or you're working out and you're listening to music, they don't require they're not two attention required tasks. It's just one task that requires your attention. So if you're getting ready to do your bench set, right, and you're working out, or you're getting ready to do squats or something like that, and you're listening to music on your headphones, on your AirPods or whatever. I'm not an iPhone guy. I'm not an Apple person, but you're not going to listen to the words while you're doing your squat. You're focused on the squat. The music's still playing, but you're focused on the squat, right? Because you have to be. And so that's a really good example of what this is. The music can going on in the background when you're done with your squat reps, and you can still listen to it while you're working out. It's not that big a deal. But when you try to put two cognitive tasks together at the same time, it's inevitable. Each task is going to go slower and it's going to be done with less quality, right? So that was that quote last week from the NASA scientist, the research psychologist at NASA, James Johnston. Now, here's what you can do instantly. If I asked you to count, and this is really important, so pay close attention to this. This is how you'll learn for yourself that you can't multitask. If I asked you to count from 1 to 10 out loud, you could do it instantly. Here's what it would sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No problem, right? 1 through 10, anyone can do that. If I asked you to recite the alphabet from A through J, you could do that instantly. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. That's 10 letters. No problem. Two different functions, like numbers and letters, two different things. Try to put them together. In other words, pair them up. 1A, 2B. Watch what happens when I do it. 1A, 2B, 3C, D4, E5, F6, G7, H8, I9, J10. See how much slower that is? It's because I'm trying to pair something that I don't pair and I don't know like I know A through J, 1 through 10. Try that yourself at home and just show that to your kids when they're trying to like watch TV and do their homework. It's a really good example, right? You can't watch the program and do your homework accurately, right? This guy talks about in his book, Crenshaw emphasizes that frequent task switching, right? Or multitasking, it always leads to time lost. In other words, if you were going to sit down and do your homework, if you're a student, or if you have continuing ed that you have to complete, and you don't know your subject matter very well, so you can't just, have it running in the background and take the exam. But if you're trying to watch a TV show and do that at the same time, you're going to miss something, right? You have to turn something off to watch the show, or you have to watch the show and turn off the recording, right? You can't do both, right? You can't do both of those things. So if you're trying to do those two things at once, and this applies to anything when you're multitasking, it's going to take you longer. It just is. And you're going to make mistakes, which is critical. Mortgage lending, there's a million moving parts, right? We always say a mortgage is a house of cards. There's 52 cards. They all have to work. When it works great. But if one of those cards falls out, or the whole thing can come tumbling down, right? So missing one thing can create that. This happens all the time in mortgage lending. It happens in real estate as well. If you're losing time because it's taking you longer to complete two tasks at the same time, because you're multitasking, doesn't it make sense to focus on completing one task at a time? So I mentioned this last week, I believe, because this is how you can do it, right? So depending on the task that you have to complete, I write a blog post every Friday. I mentioned this. So I shut off my phone. Like my phone's off. Like you can't call me on my cell phone. You can't call me on my desk phone. So I don't have a desk phone. We use Zoom for our phone service. So I don't know what they call that anymore, but the Zoom is our phone system and my cell phone. They're both off. So I can't get interrupted that way. I shut my email off. Like I close the email account because I close Outlook because it's too easy. If I get in there, man, I just keep coming. And then I put a jam session sign on my door and I close my office door. When I do that, I can write my blog post in 30 minutes or less. If I don't do that, it can take me all afternoon. Like if I'm supposed to start it at 1 o'clock, I could be working on it until 5 o'clock because I'm doing other things all at the same time. I don't ever do that anymore because I just so much more efficient to just focus on the one thing, knock it out and be done with it. And that's what I do. And I really love that. So I hope that gives you some motivation to see where this is happening in your life and just take any task that you have to do and block out everything else and eliminate all the distractions and eliminate all the interruptions, because that's what we're talking about. According to CNN, I mentioned this last week, multitasking makes you dumber than being stoned. Okay. So think about that. When you're stoned, your IQ only drops by about 5 points, even though people that are stoned can be pretty stupid. But when you're multitasking, your IQ drops more than 10 points. So you're literally, when you're multitasking, so when somebody says they're great at multitasking, they're dumber than if they were stoned. And that's what they're trying to sell me on, their ability to be good at two things at once, and you can't do it. Something that's more frightening, this also can lead to multiple mental and physical health issues that nobody's even aware of. And I think this has a lot to do with these freaking cell phones. I don't bring my phone in here when I'm doing this because I would look at it. These phones are doing this to us because we're constant distractions and constant stimulation that we're looking for, and it's random. So you check your phone even though you didn't get a beep or a buzz or a call, and you just check to see if you did. And now it's random reinforcement because sometimes you do have a text message. So it's like it's screwing with your head. According to this doctor, you're actually giving yourself acquired ADD. So the doctor was John Rattay at Harvard University. Just looking at what he's doing, but you're actually giving yourself acquired ADD. You're consciously choosing a state of being. This is funny. You're constantly choosing a state of being that most people consider to be an affliction, and that a lot of people take medication for. So keep that in mind as well. I've given you plenty of information to convince you to examine your approach at how you approach your daily tasks. I'm convinced that if you try it with just 1 week, you'll be convinced. So just figure out, I'm shooting this on December 19th. It's my son's birthday. If he's listening, Nate, happy 33rd birthday, buddy. I already called him, so it's not like this isn't how I was telling him. This idea, it's the new year. We're coming up on the new year, right? You have goals. You have things you want to accomplish. Hopefully you're focusing on business planning for the new year. That's awesome. But look at the way you use your time, because time allocation and time, you can't manage time, but you can manage your activity. And if you manage time, I gain so much more capacity in my day. I didn't gain more time. I gain more capacity in the time I already have, because we're all given 24 hours. It's how it's used, right? And so if I can do my Friday focus in 30 minutes, if I can do the blog post that I write in 30 minutes versus 3.5 hours doing a bunch of other things at the same time, I pick up that other 3 hours of capacity now because I was able to finish that one task. And it's done quicker, it's better, it's more accurate. Like there's no issues with it. So I want you to give this a try and make this a point for 2025 that you're going to give a full out effort on become more efficient, and just observe yourself working. And if you feel stressed out, if you feel like you got too many things going on at once, it's probably because you're doing multiple things at the same time. It's exactly what happens to me, and it happens to a lot of people. So there you go. Remember this quote: when someone says they're good at multitasking, they're saying they're inefficient. So if you think you're good at multitasking, you're admitting that you're inefficient. It's like publicly admitting you're going to make it a habit to screw up multiple things at the same time. Don't let that be you. All right. I hope your new year's off to an awesome start. Again, my name is Dave Gallegos. This is Make the Call. I own Zenith Home Loans, and I hope that you find value in this. Please, if you do, give me a rating. Please share it with your friends. Thanks a lot, everyone. I hope you have having a great start to your year.
Thank you for listening to Make the Call with Dave Gallegos, brought to you by Zenith Home Loans. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, and share the show with a friend or colleague who would also find value.